Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Transform Your Practice, Transform Your Life. My name is Christina Schneider, and I am a practice success coach here at The Ultimate Estate Planner. And today's episode is entitled How to Fire a Client Without Burning Bridges. Now, there certainly are some clients that you may need to fire or terminate that simply are not going to result in not having burnt a bridge. Right. And so first and foremost, I will say I've seen plenty of attorneys. I know that attorney Phil Cavish has also been guilty of this in the past, of taking on clients who you know are going to be a pain in the butt, and you take it on anyway because maybe you need the revenue, right? But with estate planning, as you know, it's not a simple one-time transaction and you're done. Oftentimes there's, conversations that are had, there's ongoing planning, they come back and want changes and updates and things like that. So you're hopefully creating lifelong relationships with your clients. And so, you need to be able to decide what is the typical ideal client. And what I find is that the ones that tend to negotiate your pricing, that seem to want to take up every, ounce of your time and energy, that are constantly giving you questions and feedback, that are just doing the most, that are becoming the most difficult to work with. Oftentimes are not worth, the flat fee that you quoted them, but also, can create they throw wrenches in what otherwise should be a pretty systematic way of doing business and doing running your practice. And so, I hope I don't offend any doctors that might be listening to this episode, but we stopped taking doctor clients. We found that doctor clients were extremely difficult to work with in our affiliated law firm because they have specific schedules that they work, and they want to meet with the highest and best attorney, which was Phil, in our practice, and he'd stopped taking on client meetings, and they just became very difficult to work with. And so we also stopped taking celebrity clients for the same reasons. And so you have to be able to decide what is your ideal client and whether or not you want to take on everybody. And I'm here to tell you, as a business owner, I hope you are in a space and a place where you can just decide, I am not going to take on everybody, that you are not obligated to take on every single client that walks in through the door. And so you make it to a place where you realize, they're either becoming so difficult to work with that you're not moving the plan forward, and there's maybe even liability on the line, the way that maybe they're even asking you to set up certain types of provisions that you don't feel comfortable drafting up and putting in their plan, simply because it's, on the other side of it, there's a litigation, a contest, or some kind of difficulty in implementing the plan. You might also be dealing with an abusive client. We've had situations where it was unclear if maybe there was a capacity issue or undue influence issue. And we were creating boundaries around how that client had to work with us in order to protect our own liability here, as to protect the client, to ensure that we were confirming capacity, confirming competence, and all that, and making sure that there wasn't undue influence. I remember a situation where we had a client who had previously disinherited his daughter, bringing, the daughter now bringing the dad in, who's our client. And, now he was making changes to let her live in the house and have the house after he passed. Well, it's very different than the previous conversation with this client, right? And she became very irate and upset that when they were leaving, we were able to confirm capacity and everything and have her outside the room, and that was what his wishes were. And then when they were leaving, she was very upset that the documents weren't in place. And we were like, well, that's not our process. We have a process around taking anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to draft up the documents and come back in. So, but she was very upset. She was very aggressive with our staff. And we didn't terminate her at the time because we were able to explain it to her. But that's a perfect example of a situation where if she had kept pushing and she had kept being abusive and toxic towards our staff, attorney Phil Cavish would have stepped in and said that would not be tolerated. That level of treatment would not be tolerated, and then likely end up terminating the client, right? And so he may have initially a conversation with the client to let them know that this is happening. Maybe they have a daughter or somebody in their family that's causing trouble with the law firm, and that we may not continue to represent them if it continues. You're giving kind of a warning if this continues. And then if it continues, you have to follow through. One of the things I would tell you is, I remember, when Phil has had to step in with a difficult client, as an employee, watching him advocate and go to defend his team was something that I really admired about him and appreciated as an employee. I think back to attorney Elijah Key's podcast previously about your team and your employees being number one. And then when you make them number one, everything else in your business also becomes better. And so here I would just say, you can absolutely give those kinds of warnings to clients. And then when you just realize this is a difficult client, they're better serviced elsewhere, you may cut your losses. So if there's outstanding work to be done, you may be better off just refunding the money and saying, unfortunately, we do not feel like we can service your estate planning needs. We're refunding you in your full amount, and we recommend that you seek, legal counsel elsewhere. And so we've definitely, as Phil's executive assistant, I've had to write a few termination letters over, in the 8 years that I supported him in that role. And sometimes it's necessary. And so, you can fire them. I don't necessarily know if you're not burning bridges. Where you could burn a bridge, let's say, is if the client was referred by a friend or family member that is also a client. If you have a financial advisor that referred that client. But then this is where I would say you need to have a conversation with the original client that referred or the advisor that referred to let them know what's going on, and that you feel that you may not be able to continue working with them, just so they know what's going on. They are likely going to be understanding of it, maybe even apologetic that you're having to go through that. And it's all, in my mind, the dignity that with which you hold yourself, and then treat your client or, prospective client that you are essentially firing. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be, you don't have to match maybe their energy. You simply decide you're not the best choice for them, for their estate planning, and that you recommend that they go somewhere else. So you can absolutely do this in a professional manner. It may still upset people because they may feel like they've gone this far in the road and now you've exited counsel. Now, if you do estate litigation and other things and represent them, of course, you need to make sure you check your state bar rules about the appropriateness of you recusing yourself in a matter, right? And making sure that they are not, disadvantaged in any kind of way. But if we've definitely have, terminated clients at the close of engagement. We've definitely terminated clients in the middle of it and just refunded their money and sent them on their way. Where you likely get people that get upset is if you terminate them and they don't walk away with a plan, but then you basically say, well, we've earned our fee because at this point, and then you keep part of their fee or their whole fee. That's not going to be a good result. So I will say that I know it's not the fun part of being a business owner, but it is the necessary part, because it is these types of clients that can ultimately become a potential liability risk for you, cost you employees if you don't handle it correctly, and ultimately are not worth whatever revenue they may be potentially bringing into your practice, in a practice that certainly is, essentially on its face, a very systematized and efficient system. So I hope that this helps you. If you have any questions or have situations where you've had to terminate clients and you weren't sure how to do and go about it, I definitely welcome you to either leave a comment or reach out to us at Ultimate Estate Planner and maybe schedule a free strategy session where we can certainly talk a little bit more in depth about your particular situation. To schedule your free strategy session, you can simply visit our website at www.ultimateestateplanner.com. You can also call us at 1-866-754-6477. So I hope today's episode, not a fun one, but I hope it was certainly an informative one that will provide you some practical guidance moving forward. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to tune in today, and I look forward to continuing to help you unlock your practice's potential. Goodbye, everybody.